Dennis Prager recently made a interesting comparison on Monday during the appearance on Newsmax. Uh, Basically comparing anti-vaxxers to people with AIDS and saying that they have it, the anti-vaxxers had it worse.
If we survive this as a free country, historians will just ask, how did this happen? How did people get governed by irrational fears? Whether it is of the non-vaccinated who are the pariahs of America, as I have not seen in my lifetime any pariah group like this. During the AIDS crisis, can you imagine if gay men and intravenous drug users, who were the vast majority of people with AIDS, had they been pariahs the way the non-vaccinated are? But it would have been inconceivable, and it should have been inconceivable. They should not have been made pariahs. But
Yeah,
this is kosher. This is okay. You can make the non-vaccinated. So it's a different America.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What? I'm almost speechless at this. Okay, literally saying people that have chosen not to vaccinate themselves for COVID are being treated worse than gay people during the AIDS crisis. Now understand how insane that is. It is a complete rewriting of history. Again, Dennis Prager was probably there. He was likely one of the people that was treating gay people as pariahs. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, look, what happened back then, there was obviously a ton of stigma towards the gay community during the AIDS crisis. I mean, some of the stories from people with HIV, they were asked to get out of ambulances, and walk to hospitals. People suspected of having HIV had their houses covered in graffiti. Bricks were thrown through their windows. In the UK and elsewhere, of course, people living with HIV were demonized in the press. They were called as the dangerous other. And there were article titles. For example, one headline says, "Gas gays, says Tory." And that's the conservative politicians in the UK. One doctor told The Conversation that most of the rather sensational reporting was around contagion, around gay men, about excluding them, and even rounding them up. Wow. Wow. In two separate polls, by the way, conducted back in the 1980s, this is 1987, roughly half of all Americans agreed that it was people's own fault if they contracted AIDS, at 51%, and that most people with AIDS had only themselves to blame at 46%. And between 43 and 44% of Americans in 1987 and 1988, when polled, believed that AIDS might be God's punishment for immoral sexual behavior. This is exactly what Dennis Prager and his like preaches. Most Americans, 60%, also agreed that people with AIDS should be made to carry a card noting that they had the virus, and 1 in 3, 33%, agreed that employers should be allowed to fire people who had AIDS. 21% of Americans said people with AIDS should be isolated from the rest of society. So that's how people felt about people who had HIV or AIDS. Is that same treatment being directed towards anti-vaxxers? Which, by the way, it's not even the same. And by the way, the Reagan administration, when the AIDS crisis first started, they just joked about it. That's it. They joked about it. But literally called it the gay plague. And they made fun of it. And they made fun of people who died as a result of it. So obvious demonization of the gay community. And by the way, again, way different. The gay community is like, we want to be taken seriously. We want treatment. But we want to be treated like human beings. Whereas anti-vaxxers are like, I'm not going to take your stupid vaccine. I'm not going to get your 5G, magnetic or magneto power, whatever. I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, That if you're gonna choose not to take a life-saving vaccine, a potentially life-saving vaccine, well then I have the right to call you a moron. That is not the same as being demonized for getting HIV. Not the same thing. Not the same thing. Again, anti-vaxxers do not want to prevent COVID-19. They want to get COVID. Many of them want to spread. Look, Dennis Prager did a video who said, I got COVID on purpose. I went out and infected myself so I could get the natural immunity. They want to spread it. And of course, look, they also literally threw parties where they infected each other so they could develop that natural immunity. And of course, have been fighting against ways to mitigate the spread. And so there is absolutely no comparison here. And it's really sickening that they use this, of all things, in order to allow themselves to play victim. And that's what it is. They're playing the victim here. They're using that victim. Oh my God, I can't believe they're treating us so badly. We're being treated so... Like, how many times have they used a Holocaust analogy? How many times have they compared themselves to being, treated worse than the Jews? It's absolutely ridiculous. The conservative victimhood complex knows no bounds. There is no bottom to that barrel. And add to it, again, the fact that it was evangelical right-wingers like this guy who spearheaded the hatred against the LGBT plus community and are still doing it against the trans community. They're still doing it against the trans community in a gigantic way. You know who's being victimized most in this country? Black trans women. They're being beaten. They're being assaulted. They're being killed, attacked, maligned. And Dennis Prager says nothing about that. No, he agrees with that. The right-wing evangelicals, they agree with that treatment against trans people. Is trans women specifically. So, shut the fuck up, Dennis. Shut the fuck up. They want to sit there and claim to be victims. Not buying it. Not buying it. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.